Trinity B1 GESE English exam. My name is Heather. I'm an English teacher. Today, I want to review this video. The candidate's name is Seshule, and he uses football as his my topic. I'd like to look at the questions the examiner asks him. I want to show you how he answers, and then I want to highlight the grammar to you, why it's important to answer the way you answer. And lastly, we will look at his topic, how he chose his topic, and how you can make your topic. Here we go. Remember, for my topic, Trinity recommends that you choose one of these areas: hobbies, sports, career, or travel. Can you choose something else? Sure, as long as you're not choosing from the 6 examiner points, no problem. You can use other topics, but these are the ones Trinity recommends. So let's look at this. We are going to keep in mind the language functions. That's part of what Trinity grades you on, is these functions: simple past, present perfect, reasons, preferences, future, duration, how long something is, and quantifying. Seshule's topic is football. Here are his 5 subpoints: the players, a visit to the match, my favorite team, Euro 2020, and my son plays football. This part of the exam took just over 5 minutes, so it's exactly what we expect it to be. Here's how the interview started. Stephen is the examiner. Stephen starts with, okay, football. Let's start with, which team do you support? Seshule answers, my favorite team is Arsenal. It's a team I've been supporting for a while now. So right here, I have been supporting. So it's present perfect continuous. Next, Stephen asks him a question in past tense. Why Arsenal? What brought you to support Arsenal? Because Stephen has a list of those grammar points that we just looked at up here, these points, and he is going to ask questions in a way that naturally causes the candidate to answer in that way. So why Arsenal? Here's the answer. I will say, I think I was influenced by my brother, who was an Arsenal supporter from a very young age. And when I first came to England, he was here already, and he supported Arsenal, and he influenced me. Seshule talks about when he came to England in the past, and also duration, because he mentions about being an Arsenal supporter from a very young age. So for a time, since he was a child, he has been an Arsenal supporter. Stephen obviously knows something about this topic, because his next question is, they haven't been so successful in the last 5 or 10 years. What has been the problem? And check this out. Haven't been so successful. And what has been the problem? So it's a question with present perfect tense in the question. So automatically we should be answering using present perfect tense. Seshuli says, that's very unfortunate, but I think there has been a few issues with management, and hopefully in the future it will be better. So he does use this tense to answer. There has been. And then he also uses future. Hopefully in the future it will be better. Right here he says there has been a few issues. Better would have been there have been a few issues, because he's not talking about one issue. There has been an issue, but there have been a few issues. Things are looking up, I think. Question 4. Stephen asks, do you think the manager will stay for another 2 or 3 years? Or do you think he will leave as well? So the question is future tense, and it's a question that invites us to give reasons. What do you think? Seshuli says, absolutely. I think he will stay. I think the owners and the majority of the supporters do support him. And I do hope he will stay as well. So he uses future tense to answer, which is great because it was a future tense question. And he gives reasons, because he says, yes, I think he will stay because, he doesn't say because, but I think he will stay. I think owners and majority supporters do support him. So he gives his reasons. It would have been a little better right here if he said, I think he will stay because, but still, it's a great answer. Next question. Stephen asks, you mentioned visiting stadiums. Have you been to the Emirates? to the Emirates Stadium? That's a present perfect one. Have you been? And Seshule answers, yes, I went to the Emirates, but 4 years ago for the Emirates Cup. It was quite an occasion. It was my first time in the stadium, and it was a really wonderful experience. So he uses past tense 3 times. So on the list, Stephen can definitely say yes. This candidate knows past tense. For this answer, if someone says, have you been? A better answer would have been if he started in present perfect. Yes, I have been to Emirates, and then switches to past. I went 4 years ago. Instead, Seshule just answered, I went to the Emirates but 4 years ago. It was grammatically correct, but he missed the chance to use present perfect in his answer. Stephen then asks, in general, would you rather be in the stadium or do you prefer watching on television? Seshule answers, I prefer watching on television now because, and that's the right form, I prefer doing something because one of the problems of being in the stadium is I took my young son there, and when you have a few people around you swearing, it's not exactly ideal. In his answer, he uses preferences. I prefer watching, and he gives reasons for the preferences. So full marks there. Also, this sounds very British when he says about the swearing. He doesn't say that's bad. He uses the British phrase, it's not exactly ideal. It makes him sound very British when you answer like that. Stephen then says, you mentioned your son. Does your son play for a team? Does he play for his school? So this is how the conversation naturally flows. This is why you can't memorize questions and answers because the examiner will listen to what you say. So Sheshule just spoke about taking his young son to the stadium, and it was one of his points on his topic form. So now the examiner asks about his son. It's a natural flow of conversation. Sheshule answers, indeed, he does play for a local team. He trains on a Saturday and we have matches on a Sunday. The examiner asks, what position does he play? He loves to play an attacking midfield. He is an attacking midfielder. He loves to score goals. The examiner asks, does he have a favorite player? Does he have a football hero? Notice, often the examiners will ask a question in 2 different ways. It's the same question. Does he have a favorite player? Does he have a football hero? At a B1 level, you can expect the examiner to ask you questions in 2 different ways. So do not stress if you maybe didn't know the word hero or player. You'll usually get a question 2 different ways. As examiners at B1 level, we automatically do ask questions in 2 different ways. When you go to a higher level exam, you'll see that less. Here's the answer. Unfortunately, my son supports Chelsea. He was influenced by his cousins. He doesn't support my team, but I do support him anyway. His favorite player at the moment is, and I don't know football players, but Sheshule understood the question and he answered it correctly. The next examiner question. We're in the middle of Euro 2020 at the moment. Have you watched many matches? So the examiner comes back to present perfect again, because a little earlier we saw Sheshule did not answer in present perfect. So the examiner is giving him another chance. And here's his answer. I have indeed. I've watched all the England matches and they've been absolutely brilliant. So Sheshule nails this. He heard the present perfect question and he answered in present perfect in a correct way. Have you watched many matches? Yes, I have watched all the England matches. He has that experience. When we talk about present perfect, do you have the experience of something? Have you done this? Yes, I have done this. The examiner then follows on with a question which isn't really a formal question. He says, very strong in defense and getting better in attack. He wants to hear the candidate continue to speak a little bit longer because Sheshule's answer was one sentence. Often I tell my students, you want 2 or maybe 3 sentences minimum to answer a question. And so Stephen is kind of directly pushing Sheshule to answer a little bit longer, and he does. He says, I think we've got a really good mix of young players, and the attack is really quite good. So many options front with young players, which is absolutely brilliant. So Seshule's answer has present perfect tense and quantifying. Because he makes this statement with quantifying, we've got a really good mix of players, and the attack is really quite good. That's quantifying. You're saying something with or without numbers. So something is really good, not so good, bad, really bad, a lot of something, a little, very much. It's these words that tell us how much of something without directly saying numbers. And the last one, so 5 minutes already passed, and the examiner says, "Can you ask me a question about your topic?" So Shule says, "Where are you from?" The examiner answers, "Edinburgh in Scotland." And that isn't exactly about the topic, but it's a lead in to the topic because then Shashule says, "Did you watch Scotland play?" So that's why he asked the question, "Where are you from?" Even though where you from isn't exactly related to the topic, it absolutely fits it when you see the second question, "Did you watch Scotland play?" You only need to ask one question to the examiner. Don't try to ask the examiner 5 questions, but something like this, you can certainly answer 2 if it makes sense for your second question to know the answer to the first question. Otherwise, just ask 1. He could have asked something like, "Have you ever been to Emirates? Which football team do you support? Have you ever been to a live game?" There's lots of questions about football Shashule could have asked, but that was what he asked. So this was a great result for an exam. Did Shashule hit all the grammar points? Yes, he did. And I pointed those out in the earlier part of the video. Also, it's mentioned in the notes on this one on Trinity, the vocabulary that Shashule uses was great. So he uses these higher level words like stadium, supported, also swearing, midfield, attack, and we have influenced again, good mix, and the British phrase, absolutely brilliant. If you want to say something is good or great or super, it's better if you use these larger vocabulary terms like absolutely brilliant. What about the subtopics? You know, I like you to match your subtopics to the grammar points because I think it makes it easier. Obviously, if you're a high level speaker like Shashule, you don't need to. You can choose any topics and pass. But I would add some verbs here. If I was doing this fresh for the first time, I would add some verbs to force certain grammar points to the points. But you see in this example, you don't have to if you don't want to. Either way, they're going to ask you the grammar points. That's why I like to do it. I would rather know that present perfect is going to come here or it will come here instead of thinking, well, it could be anywhere on any of these topics, on any verbs. I'd rather hand it to the examiner so that they have a starting point so I know I'll get that one right at least. So if you want to watch that exam in its entirety, it is on Trinity. You can see the 2 examiner topics as well that Shashule gets. He did a great job. It's a nice exam to watch. Obviously, he passed. So it's a nice example to use of how you should speak, at what level you should speak to pass this exam. Keep studying, keep learning English.